Bridges help us overcome obstacles. Bridges help facilitate movements of goods that benefit us economically. Bridges connect communities and neighbors. Bridges are essential infrastructure for our mere survival. Hi, I'm Roshun Austin, cultural anthropologist, chief executive, and neighbor. I invite you to join me on Bridging Memphis as I have conversations with my neighbors. Today's guest, I have a lot of funny stories about today's guest. Part of the North Memphis Mafia, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. I'm a native of a North Memphis neighborhood, and I met today's guest over 25 years ago. I can't remember the exact time, but it was around my early years in being involved in Memphis in community development, working with neighborhood association and the early community development corporations in the 1990s. And so when I came to work in the neighborhoods that we're going to talk about today, I said, well, I must meet the Godmother in these neighborhoods before I say that I'm going to do anything over here. One of the funniest stories, after having known her for more than 25 years, I went to her office, and I don't know how we set up the meeting, but I just remember me being on one side of the table. She was on the other side of the table with at least 3 others on her staff. And they were looking at me very suspiciously. And me being from North Memphis and pretty blunt, I said, why y'all looking at me like that? And they were like, well, who sent you and who paying you? I said, nobody sent me and nobody's paying me to be here. I said, but who's paying you all? And they were like, well, no one. I said, well, I'm here to help you get paid. And so that's a kind of a brief introduction of my sister in North Memphis in the Mafia, Miss Quincey Morris, a longtime leader of neighborhood associations and now the Klondike Smokey City CDC. Welcome, Miss Morris.
Thank you, Roshun,
okay,
for that brilliant introduction.
And so we can get started talking about. We moved into a different phase in our, as colleagues and working relationship, and I consider you a friend. So we're more than colleagues together, we're friends. Because yes. I get that morning text when I'm walking, and it will say, can you talk?
Yes.
I'm used to hearing that. But I want you to give us kind of a brief intro on how you even got into this work. I know you were already in this work even when I met you 25 years ago. You had probably been in this work probably a lifetime. Can you talk more about how you got into this space?
Well, I got drafted. My mother was involved in community work, and I attended Friendship Baptist Church.
Yeah.
And I was a part of the neighborhood association. And back in the early 90s, the city decided that they were going to have community development corporations. Mm-hmm. And since I was the youngest thing in the group, they said, well, you go and you learn about community development. And that's how I really got involved. I had a full-time job working at Blue Cross Blue Shield. And when I retired, I didn't have anything to do, so I just went up to the center and started working every day, Monday through Friday, at the Klondike Smokey City CDC Resource Center. And I got more involved in community work. We worked with the Department of Children's Services, keeping children out of foster care, and keeping families intact.
Well, we're going to take a quick break and we're going to continue that story. So we got a brief intro on how you got started in the work, but I want to go back to the word work because I think you were probably volunteering
yes.
and not getting paid to do that. So we're going to take a quick break from this episode of Bridging Memphis. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Bridging Memphis. We're going to continue our conversation with my friend and colleague, Miss Quincey Morris, director of the Klondike Smokey City CDC, but native of Klondike neighborhood in Memphis, Tennessee, and North Memphis, Tennessee. Thanks. Welcome back, Ms. Morris. Let's continue that story. We mentioned, or you mentioned, that you started working because the older people kind of drafted you into it. I understand that feeling. I've been there before, being drafted into community work in neighborhoods. But I think you were probably using the word working as, generously, because you probably were volunteering. You weren't being paid to do the work that you were doing. And you said, how often were you in the neighborhood?
I was in the office 5 days a week. When I retired in the year 2000, it was like going to work. I would go to the office and volunteer and work with the community, do workforce development, wraparound services for families, and it was an everyday thing. And it was volunteering because eventually I had staff that would come in and we would work with the community, and it was an all volunteer staff.
Yeah.
We was working without paid until you walked through the door.
Well, y'all were so suspicious of me, and I understand. I mean, why people in neighborhoods have suspicions of even someone like me who was from the neighborhood, but I had gone over into a more corporate side of the neighborhood work. I was a paid person and no longer a volunteer since early in my career in the 90s working in this work. You knew me,
Right.
but you didn't know me.
Right,
Like who
right,
sent her,
right,
who paid
right.
her, and how do we help facilitate the work that you were already doing, but you weren't getting paid? And so our reintroduction, when y'all was sitting across from me, when I asked how were y'all getting paid, or were you getting paid, and y'all were like, no. I said, well, I'm here to help you get paid. And so I didn't just say those words to you. I
Right.
made a commitment, and from dollars that I was granted, I figured out how to support your operating budget because I felt like the work that you all were doing in the neighborhood was authentic and it was very important. And I felt like you were people that, and some of the people were pretty
Right.
young,
Right.
they needed to be paid so that they could really commit to this work full time. And so I just took part of my operating budget and helped you do your operating budget.
Right.
And it didn't take anything from me. And so I guess we can kind of land there. I guess that was around 2019?
2018.
2018.
2018. Yeah.
When we first started giving you some support.
Right.
And why I was there. So I was brought to Klondike, kind of that drafting thing, by a partner. I was doing most of my work in South Memphis, and I had done some work in Frazier, more recent work, because I'd been in other neighborhoods before. But our organization had a history of doing larger tax credit transactions. So when I was approached, they wanted me to do Northside, and I was like, oh no, I'm not doing that. I don't want to just do a building.
Yeah.
I want to do different work in the neighborhood like I do in other places, but I don't want to do that like no one else is already working there. And I knew you were working there.
Right.
And so, since 2018, and our relationship has grown from there, can you talk about more of that work? But you can go back a little bit. We'll go back a little bit of how you've evolved over the years in this work.
Well, the Klondike Smokey City CDC was known in the CDC industry as doing soft city work because we weren't building houses, we weren't in affordable housing. We were involved with making sure that as the community evolved, that as the residents in the community evolved. Our theory was you cannot do economic development on Jackson and the streets behind Jackson. We didn't invest in the community. So that's where we concentrated all of our time until about 2018 when we met you and we started doing other CDC work. I think one of the turning points in our career was when we acquired the 150 lots from the Shelby County Land Bank. That was a project that the CDC had been working on for years, but for some reason we had met roadblocks. There was some reason why we did not acquire any properties. Our CDC has always been said that we didn't have the capacity.
I was going to say it's that dirty C word, capacity, even though you were doing all of the people work.
Right, even though we were doing all the people work, it was always said that we didn't have the capacity to maintain the lots. We didn't have the capacity to do affordable housing. But since 2018, we have had the capacity. We had the capacity all along, but since 2018, we have maintained not only the 150 lots, but some additional properties in the community. I think it's a total of 320.
It's probably a little more than that.
Right.
I think our partnership, and we could talk more about this partnership, owns over 400, so closer to 450 parcels in this neighborhood. But let's talk a little bit about, expand on that 2018 transfer. It was not without some political play.
It had to be politics because our little CDC went and met with the mayor, the Shelby County mayor's representative, and she said that we did not have the capacity to do this. So my friend and partner, Steve Barlow, and I went and met with the Shelby County mayor, and he said, if you can come back with a plan and a partnership, he would consider transferring those lots. And we came back with a plan and a check.
I think people get confused on that.
Yeah,
they think it was a gift.
And a check. I mean,
and a check.
And a commitment to maintain these lots, or they would revert back to the county.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of confusion because a lot of people say, well, you got 150 lots from the land the county gave you. No, the county
we
did
paid
not.
$225,000.
$225,000 for all of those lots.
And we put up $500,000.
And we put up $500,000 so we could maintain them because the lots had to be, they were in horrible shape and the lots had to be cut. And our lawn maintenance crew initially cleaned all of the properties to the property line. In Klondike, you can sit on your porch on Speed Street and see what's going on Randall. Anywhere in Klondike, you can sit on your porch. Our residents can sit on their porch and see the next street over. Because when we acquired the lots was in horrible shape, and we have maintained those lots until present. And we hired people from the community.
That's right.
To help us cut the lots and maintain them. And currently, we have our own lawn maintenance company where we are maintaining a portion of those lots. And we have hired people from the community to work 5 days a week to keep our community clean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad that we had to get that, put that on the table because people have said that they were given.
They were given.
And I don't even like to use that word. It was a transfer, and it's a partnership between the Klondike Smokey City CDC and Neighborhood Preservation Inc., which is wholly controlled by the Works. And so it's KSC, CDC, MPI.
Right.
It's a partnership, and so we did spend money on those lots. And then our legal team had to even go in, because they were part of a tax foreclosure process, there are always going to be title issues. And so we had to do some legal work in order to see a future for those lots, whether they're a garden or they are buildable, or we have to combine them to do a building. And so, we can talk, I want to talk a little bit about because, when they first came to me, it was about entering into doing the Northside project.
Yes.
But there was some pre-work
Yes.
on
yes,
Northside, and
yes,
so, and I wasn't a part of that
yes,
conversation.
Yes.
But I want to talk a little bit about that pre-work, because we like to talk about the big project
Right.
and 80 plus million.
Right.
But what happened that led us to the 80 plus $million project?
Well, we had the Klondike Smokey City CDC has partnered with a lot of organizations that come into the community and do work. We partnered with the University of Memphis that started some of the pre-work, where they interviewed residents and knocked on doors and did surveys. And then we had a company from Chicago.
Yeah, Studio Gang.
Studio Gang came along and did surveys, and they were interested in Northside. And they talked to the residents in Klondike, they talked to the alumni, they talked to the businesses, and asked, what would you like to see in Northside? And that's where the initial plan for the conversion of Northside came, and that was years before the actual Northside plan.
Yeah,
but
it was very
right,
informed
right.
by what the residents and alum had said. I think there was originally, of course, people nostalgic about high schools in Memphis.
Right.
And so we didn't close the high school.
No.
The school system
No,
closed the high school.
no.
But we can kind of talk about a Klondike that you knew from your childhood versus what happened in the ensuing years that led to the closure of the school. And so this is a very different community from a younger Miss Morris, or
Right.
even a child Miss
Right,
Morris,
right.
than what it became.
Klondike was founded in 1899, and it is the oldest African American community in the city of Memphis, because it was the first African American community incorporated within the city. And I know we have a lot of firsts, but we were the first African American community that was incorporated in the city.
I like to break that down. I know we don't want to get into the battle of neighborhoods, because there's another neighborhood to the east that would say they were the first, but I worked there
Right.
for the first decade of my career in community development. And they were earlier
Right.
developed, but not a part of the city until after the 20th
Right.
century. They were just a standalone community,
Right.
later incorporated, because they were past the end of the trolley tracks. But if you go back to the plat maps, and so that's when you get into land development,
Right.
you can see that Klondike was established as a Negro subdivision
Right.
on the plat.
Yeah, North Olympic Park.
North Olympic Park,
that was
yes,
what
its
Klondike-
original name.
That is the original, and it's still that name
On the plat, yeah.
on the properties, North Olympic Park. And I'll go back to my childhood. In Klondike, you had everything that you needed. You had lawyers, you had doctors, you had school teachers, you had ministers, everything that you needed in a neighborhood. You had grocery stores. It was a grocery store almost on every other street. And in Klondike, I could walk to school and back. And in my later days, when my children went to Northside, they all walked to school. And due to things that we had no control over, integration, and the busing of the children. My children were bused to Treasabans.
Yeah, Fraser, from North
Fraser,
Memphis, they
when
sent us to Fraser.
When they could have just walked to Humes,
Yeah.
to an African American school, but they were bused to Treasabans. And because I felt like they weren't getting the type of education that benefited them, I had them transferred to Humes. And later they went to Northside.
Okay.
And I think in Northside, when my kids were going to Northside, was the pillar of the community, and so was Klondike, because she went from Little Angels Daycare, which was across the street from Klondike, to Klondike, then to Hume's, and then to Northside. Of course, I went from Little Angels to Klondike to Manassas.
Yeah.
But when they built Northside, Northside was the place to be, and Northside had everything. They had a band, they had a football team, a basketball team, cheerleaders, everything. But because,
a gun range,
right.
automotive services for the neighborhood,
right.
cosmetology.
Yes.
It was a state of the art.
Yeah, state of the art. Everything you needed was in Northside, because people would make appointments and go to the cosmetology class and get their hair done. And if you needed your car fixed, you roll around to the back and get your car fixed.
Yeah.
Everything that you needed was in Northside. But because of the changing times, they started school of choice. So people start taking their children from Klondike or Northside to other schools.
Yeah.
And the enrollment dropped when they closed Northside. I think there was 560 children assigned to Northside, but less than 200.
Well, it was less than 40.
Right.
So I think by
right.
the time they closed it, I think 34 had registered.
Right.
For a school, they had a capacity at its height for 1,200 children.
Right.
And so it was 270,000 square feet, auditorium seats 1,800. 1,200 students would have been the max at the time your
Right.
children attended, especially your older children
Right.
attended. But, you mentioned like not having gone to Northside. I think people forget that Northside was established in the mid-'60s. And
Right.
so people that are slightly younger than you would have gone to that high school. And at one point in our history in Memphis, blacks could only go to, first Booker T. Washington was the only high school
Right.
for blacks at one point. And then Manassas and
Manassas,
Hamilton
right.
came on board. And so you were in the north side of town, so you were a Manassas
Right.
a student. But so the fact that also not just the registration at school, but what happened to neighborhoods in between. The fact that we can pick up 450
Right.
lots in a neighborhood with about 1,200 parcels
Yeah.
kind of told the story of the decline of a neighborhood.
Because as children got older, they moved away.
That's right.
They moved away. And once parents died, they did not keep up their property. But because of evolution, I would say, when people got older, they decided they didn't want to live in Klondike. And I think that one thing that gives Klondike a negative spill is when Klondike used to be considered North Memphis, but North Memphis goes all the way up past Nutbush.
Yeah.
And anything that happens in that area, they say North Memphis, and people associate Klondike with North Memphis.
Yes.
And I think that's what has caused people to have not a rosy view, not the view that I have of Klondike.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a beautiful neighborhood. So we could go on
Yes,
for
I can.
hours talking about Klondike history, just North Memphis history in general. But we'll have to have you join us again, Ms. Morris, because we have not finished this conversation about all of the work that you've been doing for so many years in your neighborhood, in our neighborhood, or in neighborhoods, because we haven't even really talked about Smokey City.
Yeah.
We're going to take a quick break, and we'll have to have Ms. Morris join us again. This has been a great conversation. We'll be right back to wrap up. Welcome back to this episode of Bridging Memphis. This has been a great conversation with Ms. Quincey Morris, my friend and colleague. We didn't even get to half of the things that we should be talking about. We haven't really delved into our partnership. And so it looks like we probably need to have another conversation to really dig into the work that we've been doing together since 2018 and some of the many accomplishments that we've had in the Klondike neighborhood. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Bridging Memphis. I encourage you to follow us on Instagram at The Works Inc. _Memphis, on Facebook, and you can follow us on our website for updates at www.theworkscdc.org. And coming soon, you can follow me on RoshunAustin.com. Thanks for watching.